What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Today is going to primarily be a news day. It's odd to think of bingo news, but here we are. I've been tirelessly working on the multi-bingo, and I continue to add more and more games. I'm up to game number 70 that's complete, and I'm working on game number 71, which should be finished tonight. Tonight being Wednesday, November 30th of 2016. 70 is over halfway through the total number of bingo games. This is a pretty exciting milestone for me. And in fact, all of these 70 games use the same 25-hole playfield with rollovers that I initially started with. So I haven't even ventured into the territory of alternate playfields yet, but I'll be there soon enough. There's only 104, I believe, games which use the same standard playfield. So in another 30-some games, I'll be working on alternate playfields. It's a pretty strange feeling to be here. I've been playing a ton of these games that I've never seen before. Games like a lot of the United early games. In fact, there's only, let's see, I've played a real showboat, I've played a caravan, and I think those are the only two in real life that I've played. But through the help of the multi, now I've played a whole lot of the United games, and I will say that they are quite fun and different. From a typical Bally perspective, what I see in especially the early United games, starting with Tropics, which added select a feature, is a lot more player choice. Once you earn the select a feature, which can be earned separately from select a spot, you can actually choose a particular feature to engage. Let's say extra ball, which is present on many of the select a feature games. If you select this and shoot your last ball before the time tree locks you out, the game will automatically step up and award you all 3 extra balls. This gives you an excellent chance of winning. Enabling the select a feature is typically not too hard, but it does depend on the position of the mixers and the reflex units in the United games. In most cases, it's pretty advantageous, though, to the player. So that's one example of a feature. It's probably the most beneficial. The other thing that you can do on many of them is enable both supercards. If you do this, and you shoot your last ball before the time tree runs out, then it's possible that you have a 4-in-a-row winner where before you had absolutely nothing. Because your supercard layout is quite different from your main card. It's a 3x3 grid instead of a 5x5. That's a pretty fantastic feature. Tropics itself is one of only 2 games that has an advanced score as part of the select feature. And initially when I implemented it, I didn't read the schematic appropriately and made it so that it jumped your odds all the way to the top, which would have been absolutely bananas. If it jumped your odds all the way to the top, then it's quite likely that a skilled player would walk away with the maximum payout, which is 300 replays. But as it actually stood, you only earn 1 extra step on your odds unit. That means that you earn an extra something like a dozen replays, maybe a few more depending on if you had a 4 or 5 in a line, but it's a a pretty good feature. It gives you a lot of stuff to think about. And as United went, and they put out a ton of games for the time period, they were really, really active in 1953 and 54. And then they started to scale back in 55 and 56. They only released a few. So I'm up to 1955 with United. I'm at Triple Play, which is the next United. What I've seen going through the schematics for each game, and of course mapping everything electrically, is that United can be split into basically 3 different eras. You have the initial era where things are really, really alien if you're coming from a Bally perspective. You have kind of a middle era where things are obviously built off of the bones of the early era, and there are some changes made during this era which enable new features and also kind of incorporate some changes to the circuitry which are similar-ish to Bally games. I think this was clever. Linderant knew what he was doing, I think. And then you have the late era United games, and these start with Triple Play. And these later games switch to an almost identical setup to their competitor Bally. They moved the mixers up to the top of the back door. The mixer motor and clutch-driven affair is very, very similar to Bally's. Instead of these oddball continuous steppers or max 50 steppers, they had some really interesting units. But regardless, this era lasts almost all the way to the end. Or all the way to the end. I haven't looked at the schematic for playtime yet, but from what I read, which was United's last game, from what I read, that is almost electrically identical to Bally's Showtime. So when I get both of those mapped out, I'll know for sure. But some of the biggest news that I have is that game number 70 was Variety. Variety was the first moving numbers game. It's a Magic Lines game, and Magic Lines allow you to move each column of numbers up or down one position, revealing the bottom number at the top or the top number at the bottom, depending on how you're moving it. It's a really cool feature. It was the first moving numbers feature. It's very eye-catching, and it really helps you put together some interesting wins. Well, I've been working on that and figured out a way to implement the search algorithm, which didn't make me incredibly frustrated immediately upon seeing it. So what I'm doing is basically making a single item list and referencing that single item list depending on the position of the magic line itself. For non-programmer people, I made it work. It's functioning, so that's exciting. But for programmer people, my search algorithm basically uses a dictionary, which is an immutable set of data. And for the magic lines, what I'm doing is including a single item list, which is mutable. And I'm changing that depending on the position of the magic line. So the way that I have that set up, I can actually use that for magic squares and the roto feature. So I can actually extend this particular search algorithm to work with every other game that Bally produced, which is pretty fantastic. I'm pretty excited about that. There's still some tweaking to be done, to make it a little prettier, but as far as that algorithm goes, but I'm fairly happy. And this directly opens the door for Big Time, which is game number 71, and the Miss America series. Miss America 57 is a fantastic game, so I'm looking forward to getting that implemented. But on top of that, there's a variety of other Miss America games which I've never seen before, which have additional features like the Red Letter game, which is present on many of the Magic Screen games. And speaking of Magic Screen games, I haven't forgotten. I'm still working on those. I have about 5 left to produce. I have, Bikini, Lido, Can, Bounty, and I think one more. Ballerina. That's what it is. I'll be working on those, starting with Ballerina here shortly. I do want to comb through some more United games, and maybe start working on Magic Squares games in between. I may end up doing the entire Miss America series because they're all very similar as far as layout and scoring. It's just the odds and the way that you can earn features which are different, which is generally not a big deal to implement once I have the initial one complete. So I'll be working on that, and the United games from Triple Play up to Playtime. So that includes South Seas and Pixies and a variety of really beautiful games. So I'm looking forward to getting those going and seeing how they work. You might be asking yourself, or me, hey Nick, how are you implementing those games that require additional buttons? You only have the 3 foot rail buttons, left, right, and R. And yes, that's true. I do, however, have the pick-a-play buttons, blue, green, and red, as well as yellow. And yellow is a dead button unless you're playing for extra ball. So, what I'll likely end up doing is repurposing yellow temporarily until I get the drawer constructed, which will give me access to more buttons, and red will remain the same, but blue and green will also be remapped. In that way, on a game like Big Time, for example, where I need 5 buttons, I can use left, right, R, green, and blue to move the numbers. And on a game like Bounty, I can use the yellow button to simulate the white button. And I can use the R button to simulate the gold button. There's some tricks that I can play with the buttons that I have. Will it be perfect? Nope, not yet. But it'll at least allow me to test these games and play them while I'm figuring out that last bit. So, that's coming up. Aside from that, I've really done very little in the game room here. I did modify my mystery coin mech for free play again. Since the vast majority of my game room's on free play, I figure I might as well. Turf King is now the only game in my game room that is not on free play, and I like it that way at the moment. It's got a different kind of play style, and I like measuring my coin input versus output on that game in particular. So I'm enjoying the way that one is at the moment. The other thing I did was fix a post that had come loose on my Papa card, just with repeated pinball bashings. It had hogged out a fairly substantial hole. So I did the old toothpick and wood glue trick, and that worked perfectly. So now I'm able to play it again. The issue was that a post would fall over during gameplay and kind of make it so that the ball would wedge between one of the ball guides and a lane guide. So fixing that is a good thing. In other news, at the top of the podcast, I mentioned that there's a lot of news, and there is. The Pinball Podcast is celebrating its 100th episode in February, February 19th to be exact, in Las Vegas, Nevada. They're having a meetup there for listeners, and my good friend and comics artist Ryan Claytor has illustrated an awesome design for them, which is both a t-shirt and a poster print. Beautiful artwork. Ryan always does excellent work. It's no surprise. And he, like many of us, is a big fan of their show, and it really shows in the artwork. Definitely check out the Pinball Podcast if you have not already, and check out the artwork, which is available at niftyled.com. In bingo news, Robert Medl, who's been on the podcast a couple times, has put together an awesome document about the Reflex unit and how his games in particular were cheating him. The operator had modified the Reflex units in many of his games to prevent them from stepping all the way back to the default position. The default position of the Reflex allows for features to be awarded without having to pass through mixer number 1. He's got a great Google Doc, which he posted up on Pinside's bingo section, and I'll be including that in the show notes. That's a fantastic document for those of you who haven't worked on a Reflex unit before and want to see if your game is actually doing what it's supposed to do. There are some bingo collectors who like to disable the Reflex unit, basically reducing the amount of portioning that the game does. I'm not one of those. I like having the Reflex, but I do like the game being fair and allowing me the full range of motion of the Reflex. So if I'm winning big, it's harder to earn features and odds increases because the Reflex has to be in a particular position, versus just always getting everything that I want from the Reflex all the time, which I think is a little boring. I think in that way it makes it easier to beat the machine. It doesn't beat it for you, that's for sure, but it does make it a little easier. So again, I'll include a copy of that in the show notes, and I think I'm going to finish up big time here. I just have a little bit of artwork left to position. I've already got the game logic done and everything written, so once I get the artwork positioned, I'll be able to test, and we'll see what happens. From there, I'll be moving on to either Beach Beauty or Beauty Beach, I think, and then United's Triple Play. And we'll see what happens from there. All right, well, thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.